So here is a, pause this, hide this. This video is about a, oh, I thought I paused. Pause! Okay, so this video is about a sunrise landscape. This one has the techniques of wet on wet in the sky, lifting while wet, the clouds in the sky, lifting while dry, the sun rays, and dry brush. There's little small birds. It also has flat wash and a little bit of gradient wash. So, all right, so I'm adding a little bit of water to my paper just so that my wet on wet is nice and bleeds into each other really well. There's not like rough edges in it. So I've, again, mixed up some colors in my palette on the side for my like lighter colors, and then I will pull directly from my palette onto this wet on wet to create highlights of darker colors, to bleed those colors in. But again, so actually right here, I add water to the edge, and you can see the watercolor kind of spread out. That really helps give you that fuzzy, soft, bleed into each other technique. So if you add a more saturated color and then you let it bleed, it's not going to be quite so harsh. So I'm mixing from like my purples to my kind of pinks to my yellows, and then I add a little bit of orange in between as well. But again, look at, I like add just like some straight water to let those bleed into each other so they're not so harsh. The reflective light of where I'm recording isn't great, but now I'm taking a tissue and lifting color away. So you can use tissue, you can use paper towel. This is toilet paper actually. They all work. I think a softer tissue works better than a harder tissue. Because it absorbs more easily and it doesn't give you as rough of an edge. And I tried to make it not look blotty, but kind of natural colors. Some areas I lifted more, some areas I just lifted a little. Then I had to let that dry before I moved on to doing my landscape portion that's in the front. So now I'm creating a flat wash of color. This is like my background landscape. And then I add a little bit of darkness to the edge for a little bit of where like the light would hit off that. I should have waited for that background piece to dry before I did the front. You can see my edge is like really rough and bleeding. It's bleeding into my background piece. I do kind of try to let that dry a little bit and then go back and redefine it after I do my sun rays. So now what I'm doing is taking a completely clean brush. It is a small brush. It is a stiff pointed brush. It's not soft. And I'm dipping in my water, but then taking most of the water off of it. And what I'm doing is rubbing on that dry background and then pulling off with a tissue. So I'm going back and over that, kind of rubbing that clean water back and forth and then lifting with a tissue. And that's called lifting while dry. That will bring back some of the whites of your paper. So this is meant to look like those sun rays kind of shooting out over that mountaintop. Now I'm going back in with a little bit of dry brush in my front mountain to redefine it because I didn't think it was dark enough and I didn't think that edge was clean enough. After I dry brushed though, I took some water and actually bled that down a little bit so it was a little more even. And then what I just did, let's move my head, is I also did a little bit of dry brush on, I did some tiny little birds flying in the sky. My camera's not like great, so you can't see them super well. Again, when you're peeling, peel away from your picture. But you can see here, great picture, that I've got like some little birds flying in the background, and that's just a dry brush technique. And that is my sunray landscape. Yay!